Well, hi everyone. Hey, thanks for joining me today on my Central Coast Market Update podcast. I'm now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course YouTube. Be sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. I am doing my podcast today on the buying process. It's very important, right? And a lot of you have had some questions about that. So I'm going to take you from A to Z on this buying process. And number one, where you start. Where you got to start with a realtor, a lender. What's next? Pre-approval, pre-qualification. Going to go into a little bit on that from what the lenders sit down and talk to you about. Buyer broker agreement. Going to spend a little bit of time on that. It's a new form that we have to use nationwide as realtors. A little bit about the lawsuit that prompted that. Looking at property, writing the offer, just going through this process to give you an idea of how this process works. So first and foremost, where do you start? You start with, of course, an experienced, knowledgeable, busy realtor, such as myself. Okay, oftentimes you'll hear, you want something done, give it to a busy person. Well, that's true. I'm working with buyers, sellers, have my hand on the pulse of the market. Look, I know the market, I know what's going on. You need that so that we can talk about properties. But the second, and maybe even the first most important of both of us, is the lender. You want to sit down with a local. I say local because the online stuff, honestly, that's a whole nother podcast for another day, but it's very janky out there, if I might say, online. I would always advise you to use a local experienced lender. And you want to sit down with them first. And they're going to go over all your numbers because you have to know your numbers. That really comes first, honestly. Know your numbers. What can I afford? What do the mortgage payments look like? What does the down payment? You want to keep that where you're affordable, right? Where that payment, it's going to be a little high. Is it going to be too high? Do we need to go to a lower price point? Only a lender can go over all your information and tell you what those numbers are. And there's a difference. They can pre-qualify you, which is a little bit lighter. They kind of get information from you on the phone, maybe verify a few things. But the pre-approval letter makes you look better and stronger as a buyer, because when you talk to a lender, and most of them, if they'll go the extra mile and they're worth their salt and go the extra mile, they will pre-approve you, which means they're pre-underwriting you as a buyer. There's two different parts of this. You as a buyer have to qualify, then the house has to qualify, which means an appraisal. So you as a buyer, very important. You get pre-approved, you're halfway through that process already when you go to make an offer to a seller, which we'll get into in the purchase agreement part of this podcast. So that's a very important part. So a pre-approval makes you look better. Pre-qualification's okay. It's just going to be based on more information, where pre-approval you're a little bit further down the line. So the next thing, after you know your numbers, okay, it's going to tell you, based on all your information, here's the purchase price we can go look at. Great. Here's our information as a buyer. Great. We're going to then sit down, because the buyer broker agreement is another very important part of this process, and it really comes first before I show you any property. It is now required that you and I, as your realtor or any realtor and buyer, has to now have a contract called the buyer broker agreement between their realtor and you as a buyer. So we sit down and fill this out. What it has is just information about the houses we're going to look at, the county we're looking at, and it's going to have on there compensation. Now, this is why this has come about. National Association of Realtors were sued. Bad, unethical realtors out there were doing unethical things when it came to commissions. That's what this is all about and come down to. So now we have these buyer broker agreements where everybody is talking about the compensation to the real estate brokerages. I think it's a good thing. I think it keeps everything transparent. Now you, as a buyer, you weren't knowledgeable really. And I don't know why. It wasn't talked about a lot with buyers because it came from the seller side. Now we're all talking about it. We're all talking about the percentages, and you are more informed on how that part of this contract works. So most buyers are not going to have the extra money you have. And typically you can afford the home, your down payment, escrow costs, escrow fees, loan fees, but you don't have extra money to pay your real estate agent's brokerage. That's where the buyer-broker agreement comes in, because it's going to clearly state that if you don't have the money to pay for your representation, we are going to ask the seller to do that. It's all integrated into the purchase agreement now, and that's where this buyer-broker agreement comes in. We sign it. I'm your realtor. In showing homes, I have to have this document. So we sit down and talk about that as well as the compensation. So much better, much more transparent. At that point, what we're going to talk about too, in looking at the purchase agreement part of it, you will also be talking with Zoe. And if you look back a couple of podcasts ago, she talks about this with the buyer-broker agreement and the compensation. So the compensation comes in when you're writing an offer. This is where this would come in. When we're going to write an offer on a property, there might be several buyers. To stand out, you might talk to Zoe, because there is, with these lenders these days, because of this buyer-broker agreement, because of the compensation, they are allowing for that. It all depends on what you qualify for, how much. You got to sit down with her or your experienced lender and talk about you and the proceeds that you're going to have, the money you have, paying me, your realtor. That does also make you stand out in an offer. So that is probably going to be something that you want to discuss and at least be knowledgeable of as we go out and look for property, and when we make an offer on something. So that's a very important part of that too. Check that podcast out, but there's also her information if you want to ask questions about that part of it. That's an individual, buyer by buyer deal there. So, okay, we have the buyer-broker agreement. We've talked about the compensation, and we go out now and we're going to look at property. And before I have you do that, I love to have you do a top 10, okay? What's the top 10 things I want to see in a home? Your top 5 are probably going to be, or even your top 3, are things that's not negotiable. I want a garage. Hey, I'm good with 2 bedrooms, but I got to have 2 bathrooms, right? I think anyone that's married and coupled together, you got to have a second bathroom, right? So 2 bathrooms, non-negotiable. Square footage, what you want to see there, want a yard, want a pool, all these different things I have you write down. And as we go and look at properties, it's very valuable to me. Any information you're going to tell me is going to help me see, okay, this is what you're looking for. This is the style you like. Craftsman, ranch house, something, maybe you want an acre. That's all going to depend on your purchase price power, right? It goes back to lending and what you can afford. Very important. So you make your list. We're going to go out. We're going to go look. Right now, with the market the way it is now, coming back into a more normal market, there are more listings to look at. Last weekend, I had 7 to show a buyer. That's a more normal market where buyers have more to choose from. Sellers, it's not a bad thing. That's another day for another podcast. But it's a good thing to have stuff to choose from, different things to choose from as a buyer. We go out, we look, okay, you say, Cindy, we found them, our top 3. You might have top 2, who knows? Okay, let's make an offer on number 1, see where we can go. So we sit down and we go through the purchase agreement. On this purchase agreement, there's 3 pages that are a grid that we're going to put, here's the purchase price. How do we come to that? The list price is what it is. Maybe the house needs some work. Maybe it's been sitting on the market for a while. We have to sit down and talk about those things. Are you, as the buyer, wanting complete turnkey property? Do you want a little bit of a fixer? Do you want a total fixer? Maybe you have someone handy in your home that can do those things. So we talk about that before we make the offer. So we come up with the price you want to offer, the escrow period of time. Typically it's about 30 days. There is a good faith deposit that is typically called earnest money deposit. That's another thing we talk about based on how much you want to do, based on pretty much what the price of the property is. Let's just say it's a $500,000 piece of property. And you would typically do anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 for your good faith deposit, which goes into escrow and stays there. It's your money. That's another part of this purchase agreement. It's your money unless you cancel at the last minute, right? That would be fair. The seller has taken their property off the market. That's what the earnest money is about. Good faith. Hey, if I cancel, seller, I would expect that you would keep my money. If I cancel for no reason, because you're going to have, after we look at what you're going to offer, the escrow amount of time, your investigative periods, which are typically 17 days to do your inspections, making sure this house doesn't have anything major wrong with it, because that would be another negotiating tool. Maybe they're going to credit you. if there's something wrong. Maybe they're going to come get some money off the purchase price. All kinds of things can happen during that time. But your inspection periods are 17 days typically. And you're going to do all these inspections, including the appraisal, including anything the lender needs to do. And at the end of that, if the property appraises at where we are, let's just say we're at $500,000, appraisal's good, you're good as a buyer, inspections look good, you remove those contingencies and we're moving on to you getting your loan documents. So then you're going to remove those contingencies. Seller, I'm happy with this house, I'm moving forward. You remove all your contingencies. Inspection, appraisal, loan contingencies. After you do that, if you change your mind, if you have to cancel for whatever reason, that $5,000 deposit in escrow, the seller has the right to keep it. Now, I will go, that has really only happened maybe a couple times in my 25-year career. I will go and fight for you to maybe, have half of that. Sometimes if a seller has a backup offer, they won't keep your deposit. There's different things that can happen in different scenarios. Typically, you're not going to cancel, but you can never say never, right? You just need to know, I like you to know all the details of what could happen in all the scenarios. So that's what that deposit's about. So you go through, you go, okay, we're moving forward with this. So you've removed your contingencies and now you're moving forward. We keep the lender in the loop through this whole thing. The lender needs to know, is it a go? Are we doing this? And then they write up the loan documents. When that happens, we're heading to the close. That happens the week, pretty much, of the close of escrow. So you have a close date, let's just say end of the month, the 30th. That week, your loan documents are written up by your lender, and they go directly to the escrow company. Now, I have a great podcast coming up all about escrow. That'll be coming up, a good one for you to listen to. But the loan documents go to the escrow officer, and you make an appointment to go in and sign all these loan documents. Sometimes the lender's there, most of the time it's the escrow officer, and they're going through all this paperwork, and you're looking at everything the lender said the payment is, all this detailed information on these loan documents that you're signing. After you sign those, the escrow officer gets it back to your lender, and of course you've got your down payment. You're going to bring in the rest of what you owe for the down payment on your home. The lender is going to wire their portion. So on a $500,000 home, you might have a $400,000 mortgage. And that lender, let's say you have $100,000 down. So your lender's going to then wire $300,000 because that's what your mortgage amount is going to be minus your down payment, etc. So you'll be signing all those documents, make sure that they're all looking good. And after that happens, we're just waiting for the final approval. It has to go back to your lender for the underwriter to go through it and make sure everything looks right. There's no missed initials. If everything looks good, they press the button, so to speak, and the rest of the money comes into escrow, and you record through the county. Escrow records you as the new owner of that home. So very exciting at that point. Meet you, get you the keys, and you start your new life in your new home. So it's a very exciting thing. It's a lot of fun. I love it. I love showing you property, and I love that end result where big smile on your face to start your new life in your new home. So when you're making an offer on a property, and let's say your offer doesn't get accepted, you could always have the opportunity, if the seller agrees, the seller has to say, hey, I will take a backup offer. You have that option. What that means is, no different, we're sitting down, they've already seen your offer. So now they've chosen a different offer, a different buyer. We still, if the seller agrees to take a backup offer, we're still going to negotiate. Okay, so did you like our offer? Are you going to accept our offer as written, or do we need to modify it and go back and forth with the negotiating process? So when you're in negotiations, you go back and forth maybe a couple of days, and everybody comes to an agreement at some point during those couple of days. So it's no different. We would negotiate that and put you in what's called first backup position. What that means is, if that offer that they accepted and those people cancel, it puts you in first position. So they cancel, you slide right in there, you're the new buyer, and we start the process of escrow. So that's how that works, and that part of it. That is an option for you. Very exciting. Hope this information was really helpful for you today. Please pass it on to anybody you think would find this information informative and helpful. Of course, my information is going to be at the end of this podcast for any questions you have. Please reach out. I'm happy to sit down with you. And of course, as a buyer, we're going to go over all this information in person when you're ready to buy a home. So thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned. We've got some great podcasts coming up with some information that was in this podcast. We'll do a deeper dive on that. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week.